Okay, thanks for joining me this afternoon. It's Tuesday again. Tuesday comes around really quick, doesn't it? If you saw on Facebook, you would have seen I posted this card. This is the one that I'll be making for you today. I thought I'd revisit the Sugar and Spice collection stamps that Lisa brought to us in one of her first shows, I think it was, coming to Create Craft. It could have been one of the first or the second shows. I was inspired by the shows that are coming up on Friday the 7th of August with Lisa. There's some really exciting brand new bits that are coming to Create and Craft. Lisa has two shows, one at 9 and one at 3:45 I believe, and if you like your colouring, then they are the shows for you. They're the shows to watch. There's some lovely, magical, fantastic new products coming up, lots of new stamps, some MDF as well, so I'm sure there'll be some sparkly bits and pieces for everybody who likes to collect Lisa's embellishments as well. So I don't have the stamps that are coming up on Friday. There may be a little purchase going on from my side of things on Friday, but I do have the Spice and Sugar collection, so I was able to do a little bit of colouring for you for these today. Also, what I wanted to do is just show you another way to use Lisa's triangle stencil. These are the 8x8" aperture stencils. Lisa's already released the circles and the rectangles a couple of shows back, but now we have the triangle and we have the hexagons as well. I'll just bring in the hexagon set for you too, in the same format as the circles and the rectangles. We both have 8x8 stencils, and they're the aperture stencils because we have the one shape in various different sizes, which is really useful. But not only do we have the apertures, we actually have the cutouts also, and these we can use as masks. So lots and lots of different techniques. So every aperture that you see on the stencil, barring the little design on the side, then we have the masks for them there too. I'll just show you the hexagon ones here. So the hexagon, just by the nature of the shape, I think we possibly have more shapes on there. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 triangles. So you can see we actually have the masks, the hexagons, and we have the triangle ones as well. I won't be using these today, but if you have a look back on previous YouTube channels that I've done, I have actually used the masks for the rectangles and the circles, and I'm sure in time I'll use these too. So I'll be using the triangles. I'll be using this stamp set, which is the Sugar and Spice collection, Never Stop Being You. Here we have 1, 2, 3 characters and some sentiments to go with them. We have these stamps here. So the stamps are actually larger than what appears on the packaging at the beginning. I'll just put them on the clear piece so you can see. They're really nice size to colour, and there's so many different ways you can use these, and I know the design team have been using these lots when they were over the months as well. So look back through our Facebook group, our Crafting with Lisa HORTON Facebook group. Also on Pinterest, there's many ideas on there where the design team have previously used them, and also people have used them on our YouTube channel as well. I have already stamped and coloured the character that I'm using today because it takes me such a long time to colour, and I'm not an expert, so I wouldn't want to show you how I colour, but this I've already coloured the same characters I have previously had on the card. I took a little bit more time over her and we've gone with a different colour today. So I shall put her to one side and we'll create the background, and it's the background really that I wanted to sort of demonstrate for you today using the triangle stencil. So we bring in the background. Now I haven't actually cut the DL card. I couldn't decide, to be honest, I couldn't decide on the colour card I was going to use. So what I shall do, I'll just create the background and I shall put the character on, and then later on I shall mount it up onto the card and I shall post that into the group. But the background that I'll be using is just slightly smaller than a DL card there, so you can see on the back of this one that how that will mount. I shall be using a piece of copy paper as well. I always do. You know me with my inking techniques. There's always a piece of copy paper on the side. Plus, working onto Lisa's messy mat is a godsend actually for these inking techniques. So I'm just going to fold my piece of copy paper, and I'm going to leave it with a little gap here, and it's just a little tip, something that I've actually only discovered this morning when I was playing about actually. I'm going to fold it with a bit of a gap, and this gap will relate to the white area that I want to leave at the bottom of the background here, because I want to create a sky background. And I'll just slot that underneath, and you can actually feel where it butts up to that folded piece underneath. And what that will do, that will give me my straight line. You can see here that the way I've created the trees in the background, I've left a nice straight line, so I've got a nice white section at the bottom here. And I always mask that off. But this here I found that will hold in place nicely. So when I go on to, make that out of the way, use my ink, which I'm using the tumbled glass for the sky, and I'm using a brush this time because it covers quite quickly. We've actually got the nice straight line, and that card isn't going anywhere. So to start with, as you've seen me do in the past, I'm going to go on with the ink. And we'll just brush that tumbled glass ink all over the top area of this piece of card. Now there's less need when you're using a blending brush like this to tap off the excess ink on your blending mat. You'll remember that when I actually use the blending sponges like this, I tend to sort of blot off the ink a little bit. There's less need with these blending brushes because they don't pick up quite as much ink initially. So you can see that I'm just going straight on here and creating that sky. Now this possibly looks a little bit pale to you. I'm trying to go a little bit more heavy-handed than I normally would. We get a lot of pigment there. Now we've done that, and you'll actually see how much ink that I've put on once I've actually moved away that copy paper there. Now I'm just going to brush away all the little fibres of that brush there, because that does shed a little bit. There we are. So already that is actually a lot more bluer than we've created initially. Now what I want to do is start creating the trees like a background, the mountainous background. I will bring in my copy paper again, but this is where I start introducing the stencil, and you can see here now that I've actually used these triangles as the trees, and as you can see, if I place those over here, I've just used a series of colours and just sort of, not randomly placed, but just gone along without thinking too much to create the background. And I found that when I was playing around, to use different shades of green gives the best effect, because obviously if you look at mountains then all trees are different colours, but it gives you some distinction between each of the triangles that you're using. This would obviously work also if you're using a different shaped card. If you're using a different shaped card, then you would actually be able to use some of the larger triangles as well. But so I wanted to use the DL because I think it's an unusual shape and it just fits so well with the character. So I'm just going to move that to one side. We don't want to get her covered. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to line up the bottom of the triangles with the line that I've created with this sky here. So I should just line that along the bottom, and this is when I do come back in with my blend-in sponges. And you can see I've also got a mix of different green inks here. I should try and keep them in shot. I'm using the regular distress ink. I find these nicer to work with when I'm blending in this way, but the type of ink again you use is entirely up to you. So I'm taking my blending ink, I'm just blotting it off just slightly onto the messy mat there, and I'm just going through the stencil, and we'll go quite heavy actually with the green because initially it's got to cover the blue, and also we want to get some sort of shade variation as we go through the stencil like that. Now if you find it easier when you're using a stencil of this nature and it has other shapes and you're sort of perhaps close to the edge, you can actually mask these off with perhaps sticky notes like this. So then you'll be sure that you won't actually go through the next door aperture and sort of add marks onto your project that you might not want. So you can just mask off like that, and also along the side as well. So you are just isolating the shape that you want to use. I didn't find these ones actually too bad to use because there's plenty of space in between. So you can see here we've got the beginnings of our background. Now my ink's in the way there, so excuse me, there'll be a little bit of rearranging as we go. Now the next triangle I use, I'm going with this smaller one. Again, I'm lining it up along the bottom of the masked blue line that I used, and I'm actually overlapping the triangles as well. And I shall go in with a different green. And you will see when it overlaps, you'll see the next door green coming through, but that adds just sort of depth and adds an extra bit of shading. You can perhaps use it to your advantage to shade the colours and the trees that you have there. So I'm going to go back in with the larger one. Oh, wrong one. There we are, this one this time. And I won't overlap that too much because I want to go in with a smaller one in a second. And it's just a case of choosing your colours and blending in. You can add some shading within the apertures themselves if you have the block colour initially, and then if you just perhaps work just in one corner and just keep layering that ink in one corner, you will add an element of shading in the triangle there, which again adds to the depth of what you're trying to achieve. Now I'm going to put in a slightly smaller triangle. By doing this, I'm going to put the mask of the copy paper back in again along the blue line. I'm going to use the smallest of the triangle, but I'm going to actually set it down lower so the base of the triangle is actually onto the copy paper here. So that will just give me another shaped triangle, basically. Just something a little bit smaller so we can get some sort of variation on height as we go, and I'm going to change colour again. I should perhaps, bear with me, I'll just get a darker green, I think. Pine needles, I think. I didn't use this one previously, so hopefully I shall just check the colour on the copy paper to start with. We don't want it too dark. Okay, that will work, I think. So we just go in with that darker colour there. And as it's a lot smaller, I think this darker colour will work quite well. So there we are. You can see now, as I bring that away, the advantage of putting the bottom of the triangle on the copy paper, so we have a nice smaller triangle just there. Again, so we just carry on working along. The beauty of doing this also is that it will turn out different every single time, whichever way the mood takes you, really. I did experiment earlier on with doing like a sunset and doing the these triangles in like a purple, so there'd be like mountains in the background. But I didn't have quite the right purples to work with, so that will be a work in progress, and I shall finish that off and show you that at another time. Okay, so we'll go back in with bundled sage this time. Now this technique would be brilliant, I think, for a Christmas look as well, because what you could do, you could perhaps cap the top of these triangles with white or with glitter to act as snow, and then you can put any one of Lisa's Christmas characters in the foreground as well. Instead of using sugar there, sort of floating on her balloons, you can use one of the Christmas characters from the Christmas stamp sets that Lisa released when it was Christmas in July. Now this, I've used a larger triangle here. I've managed to fit it on, and I shall only use one of them so I don't overpower the scene. But what it does allow me to do is have that little bit more space for blending. So I'm just going to come in with the blending sponge that I used for the darkest ink, the pine needles. I'm not going to put any ink on it at the moment. I'm just going to use what's there and just lightly brush that into the corner, because any residual ink on the sponge will be just enough to add that little bit of shading. There we are. Can you see that fine? Yeah. Then what I can do, I can come back in with my, sorry, there's a lot of rearranging of inks here as I move along the page. I shall come back in with the middle-sized triangle, I think. And I shall put that mask in again at the bottom, just so as I get a slightly different sized tree going on there, because it's good to have that variation. And I should go with peeled paint this time, which is a lovely orangey, not orangey, sorry, a nice yellowy green. And again, that overlapping of the triangles on the corners there just adds to the shading, I think. And then I think I will use that larger one again, just for the last time, for the last triangle. I'm actually going to overlap that, so we're not going to have the full tree on the edge. And I shall come in with possibly the cracked pistachio there. Add a different shade of green again. And I'll pick up a little bit of the dark ink, just that little bit of shading like that. Actually, I think what I might do also, looking at it, just for balance, I might just put a little triangle just coming off the side there. And I I shall use whatever's left of this ink on here. Very shabby shutters, shall we? There we are. There we are, that just finished that off nicely. Now I really like that, actually I really like the darker green in that. That's something that I didn't add on this first one here, so if I just bring that in to compare, you can see the colours are actually a lot bolder, and I really like that. Okay, we don't need these inks anymore, so let's just match the lids up to the inks there. It's actually great fun doing something like this. You get a chance to use all your inks and have a good old play. So I'll just bring the sugar back in, and I'll bring this card back in. Now to tidy up this line along here, for this particular card I'd like to have that just sort of tidied up a little bit. What I did use was 2 tiny slithers of paper from Lisa's paper packs. It doesn't really matter which one, it's whatever you have left over and whatever matches with the design that you have. Now Lisa's paper packs are 6 by 6 inches, and obviously this is a little bit longer, but it doesn't matter. If you make that join, all you do, you just create that join and you make sure that it sits under your main image like that. So I shall just glue these down. They need the tiniest bit of glue. And it's super fiddly. So I'm just going to line that up along there. Now if you do this design, then obviously depending on what you're going to put over the top, you could actually leave it so you could see the bottom of the trees. But in this case I actually want to have that covered. So just line that up like so. That just creates a horizon, just gives a nice focal point for the eye to focus on, and just adds that little bit of colour. And I like how it just tidies up the bottom of that stenciling there like that. Now just move those out the way, and the glue, bear with me. It sort of reminds me of these scenes that you see out in Canada, where you see the mountains in the background and the lake in the front. It's that's where I daydream I am sometimes one of these days. When we get to travel again, that's where I'd love to go. Now just as a little added detail, I'm going to bring in this stamp set, which is the In the Loop stamp set, mainly because I want to use the tiny little texture stamps that are on here. If you have any other texture stamps, they would work perfectly fine, but I like these just because of the size that they are. Actually, what I will do, I need to bring in a couple of the inks again, not all of them. And I shall bring in the mask, and I shall give it a quick wipe so I don't spread the ink I already have on there. Let's just give them a quick wipe. So then, because the nature of these stencils and the material that Lisa uses to cut them, they clean up really, really well, and they're so sturdy, as you can see, that they take a lot of use. Now, I'll show you what I'll do. So I do where I'm arranging things quite a lot. What I want to do is just rematch the stencil shape to what I've actually put on the card there. And I'm going to take just one of these stencil shapes now, these stamp shapes, sorry. Now this one is like, I'll show you in the packaging, is like a lined, a distressed line. This one is like a distressed sort of dotted look. And what I'm going to do, I'll use it on my fingers because I have the flexibility to actually work within the stencil then. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of detail within those stenciled trees, as it were, and that just gives a little bit of texture to the trees there. I don't know if you can see that, which when that is layered on top of the shading adds a really nice design point. It can take the blandness away from the trees, and it just makes them stand apart from each other a little bit. Now the best way I found to do it was actually layer with the ink that you use to stencil them initially, but the way that you choose that is, you know, sort of personal choice really. And you won't need to do it on each and every tree, I don't think. It's such a subtle detail, but I think it adds sort of authenticity. I think it really adds to the design. It sort of makes the person receiving it sort of really believe that they, you know, it was a tree stamp that you used. I just really like the detail that this adds. I say I won't use it on every tree, and I possibly, no, I will do. I will show you with a smaller dotted stamp as well. And I shall go on to this one here, which is that sized tree. I'm just trying to think what ink it was that I used. Going with the cracked pistachio, I think. You don't need these on a stamping block to do this either. Yeah, you can see the cracked pistachio, that just adds a little bit of detail, and you can overlap these stamps as well. So you have some more, you know, a denser patterning. There we are. You can see how that's building up the look of the background, and I shall perhaps go once more into this one here and leave it at that, I think. So less is more sometimes. There we are. Okay, I'm really happy with that. I really like how that's actually come about now. Now you can see here, as I put the sugar on there, we've got the balloons, but in the background here it is still actually quite white. Now just a little tip, decide on where the background where she's going to be sit, and just look at the background that these balloon strings are actually sort of sitting against. And what you can do is very gently, either with the markers or pencils that you actually coloured the character with, or just, you know, really gently with the distress ink that we use to create the background. Just take a bit of blending sponge and just gently tint this white area of card. And what that will do, that will just blend that just into the background a little bit more. Can you possibly, I don't know if you can see the difference at this stage, but because this is mainly against the blue sky, that now looks less conspicuous than this area which is white. And it's just those tiny little details that I find add a really nice finish to your cards. Just do it just really gently, and it doesn't need to be a huge amount of colour added. is just that hint of colour, just to take away that whiteness that you've perhaps tried to blend that into the background. I think that works really well. Now I've already added the foam back into this, so I'll just take those off. Now I've mixed and matched a lot of my the packaging of the foam pads actually, so this is why this all looks a bit all over the place. There we are. It's been a long while since I've sat and done any colouring actually, and it took me a while to get back into it. It took me a long time to colour the demo card that I showed there, but I really enjoyed that. And as I say, mainly inspired by all the stamps that are due to come to our screens on Friday with Lisa. And I know Lisa's got some fabulous demos, and if you keep a look onto our Facebook page tomorrow, there'll be another little treat which will just give you a flavour of the show that's due on Friday. It's something quite different to what Lisa's brought to us before, and I'm pretty sure you'll all fall in love with it. I know as a team that we have, and I can't wait to get my own sets of these stamps as well, so I can have a play. Right, all that leaves me to do now is to stamp a sentiment on there. So I think I'll go with the one that I used here, Never Stop Being You. I like that sentiment, and I think that's actually quite apt for a lot of people these days. Now, as always, I'm going to stamp this in a black, in the VersaFine, because this will give me a lovely crisp image, and I know for a fact that Lisa's stamps will give me a lovely impression. So the VersaFine inks just back me up on that. They give a super impression, and I know that that's going to be nice and bold, and I'm just going to stamp that straight onto the card like so. And the finishing touch, you can see what I've done here. I've just doodled around the outside, just with a black fine liner pen, and it's just freehand. This time I've stayed quite close to the edge of the card, and we just run backwards and forwards like so. Don't think that needs any more than that. Now I'll just show you on the back of the card here, because we've got the blank colour. I shall mount this up in a little bit later. You don't need to see me do that, but you can see how, as a DL card, which is quite an unusual shape to use these days, it was in fashion at one stage, but that just gives us a really nice background for Sugar, who's just flying in and enjoying life. Okay, I think I'll leave it with you there today. I'll just look at some of the comments there. Oh, hi Christine, lovely, thanks for joining us. Yes, I think Natasha from our group has just confirmed that the show on Friday will be magical. Oh, washi tape would work as well. Yes, Elizabeth, it would work along the bottom, wouldn't it? Yes, you're quite right, especially if you've used a wider card, and you'd have the space to be able to put that on as well. Oh, thanks Natasha, you like the backgrounds. Yes, Elizabeth, these backgrounds would actually look good with what's coming up on Friday too, wouldn't they? Yes, so I really hope you can tune in. Again, it's at 9 o'clock, so it's not too early, and 3:45 show as well with Lisa. So thanks for joining me today. I'll get the video uploaded onto YouTube, so it's something that you can look back on again. and I shall see you all next Tuesday. Thank you.